Hello, my name is Keshwani. That's Keshwani, Keshwani. We are here because we want to prepare for the GMAT. We have been solving GMAT math problems out of this book here, GMAT Review, the official guide, the 13th edition. If you do not own this book already, purchase one immediately. You're going to need it. This book contains 230 problem-solving questions. It has 174 data sufficiency questions. We have solved every single problem already. If you're interested in watching the original solutions to any of these problems, you will find the original solutions from day 1 through 250. Right now, we are in the process of redoing the problem. We are in the process of resolving the problems. The problems that we are about to solve are the ones that you will find on page number 278. Please turn to it. Page number 278, the very first problem. The very first problem on page 278, that will be number 35. It says that we have a rectangular box. We have a rectangular box, we are told, which is 48 by 32 by 15. Inside that box, we are going to put K identical cylinders. K identical cylinders are placed upright in the box. The cylinders are to be placed upright. Each cylinder, we are told, is 15-inch high, which makes our life very easy because now we know the configuration of it. The cylinders are 15 inches high, which means this dimension here, 15, is this how the box is going to sit, which tells us that the floor of the box is going to be this one. Okay, keep that in mind. The question simply is, how many will fit in? How many will fit in? Well, let's find out. In the first statement, they tell us, each cylinder has radius of 4. Well, if radius is 4, that tells us that the diameter of each cylinder must be 8. The diameter must be 8, and we just established that this is our floor. Our floor looks like this. This is our box here. This is our box here. This is the height. The height is fixed. This is 15 because the cylinders have to be put this way because that's the height of the cylinder. This floor that we're talking about, this is what we're dealing with here. What are the dimensions of that floor? Well, that floor right here, this floor, because at the bottom of it, this floor right here has to be 48 by 32. Has to be 48 by 32, and it doesn't matter where you put 32 and where you put 48. It's 48 by 32. And since the diameter is 8, actually I'm taking too long here, which it should be quite obvious that 48 is easily divisible by 8, and so is 32, and that's for a reason. It's for a reason, obviously, because they have to fit in nicely. So we can figure out how many are going to fit. This first statement by itself is quite sufficient. We don't have to waste our time trying to figure out how many will fit in. Each first statement by itself is quite sufficient. A, D, B, C, E. Had we been taking a real exam, we wouldn't actually be silly here to actually figure out how many will fit in. They will fit in here. 48 is divisible by 8, so is 32. So either it can be 4 or 6, it doesn't matter. You can have 4 rows one way and the other 6 this way. 1, 2, 3 and 4, there you go. So that's your 8, 16, 24 and 32, and then you're going to have 6 the other way because that's 48. 48 divided by 8 is 6. So you're going to have 6 the other way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. This is what it looks like. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, and 4 this way. So it's 4 times 6. The answer is 24 cylinders will fit in there. But that wasn't necessary. The point is, the first statement is quite sufficient. That tells us that the answer cannot be B, C or E. The answer would have to be either A or D. Let's look at second statement. Let's put the second statement on the top. We're going to put it on the top because obviously one does not want to erase the masterpiece. But when you do things like this, you have to make sure that we do not mix up the information from the first and the second statement. That's the very common mistake here. Once we look at the second statement, we have to erase our memory. Everything that we read from the first statement, that has to be erased from the memory. It doesn't exist. The second statement tells us the 6 cans fit along the length. 6 cans fit along the length, which means the 6 times the diameter has to fit in along the length. And the dimensions that were given to us, the 48 was the length there, that's the longest part there, and therefore that tells us the diameter must be 6. Diameter must be 6. It says 6 cans fit along, 6 of the cans fit in exactly along the length of the carton. And we are told that it was the carton, in the beginning we were told that it was 48 by 32 and 15. 15 was the height, and this would be the length and the breadth, or the width. The length, the breadth, and the height, or the width, as the Americans like to call it, the width. The length is 48, and we are told that 6 of them fit in nicely. Well, if 6 of them fit in nicely, then 6 times the diameter has to be the length, which means the diameter is 6. And once we know the diameter, the rest is the same as before. Second statement by itself is also quite sufficient. The answer is D. Answer is D, because second statement turns out to be sufficient by itself. Let's look at the next question, shall we? Next problem. Problem number 36. In problem 36, they tell us that x minus 4 equals z. We are told that y minus x equals 8, and 8 minus z equals t. Let's call them equation 1, 2, and 3. The question simply is, what's the value of z? What's the value of z? These people have a tendency, these people who put together this book, the problems there in the book, they have a tendency to go from the sublime to the ridiculous. Do you understand? They give you one problem which is very challenging, makes you think, not the one that we just finished, but there were some in the earlier, and then they once in a while throw in a question to you which is just ridiculous. It's too simple, too silly, like this one. The question is, what's the value of z? The first statement tells us that x is 7. Well, if x is 7, bloody hell, is 7 times 4. So 7 minus 4. X minus 4 equals z is just 7 minus 4. What the hell? The first statement by itself is enough. A, D, B, C, E. The answer cannot be A, C, B, C, or E. Let's look at second statement. The second statement tells us that t is 5. Well, t is 5. Here's t, right here, again, ridiculous. 8 minus z equals t. Now, the equation number 3, and t we are told is 5, we can figure out the z obviously. Second statement is also enough by itself. The second statement is also enough by itself. The answer is D. Let's move on then. Number 37. That was just too silly. That was just too damn silly. Number 37. Average price of 3 items, we are told, is $50. Average price of 3 items, we are told, is $50. We are also told that if the price happens to be less than 80, then there is no sales tax. If the price of the item is less than $80, then there is no sales tax on it. If the price happens to be greater than or equal to $80, then we are told that we have to pay 6% tax. 6% tax on the entire amount, you understand? Not amount that is more than 80, on the entire amount. Actually, none of that actually matters because we don't actually solve the problems here. We just answer the question whether or not we have sufficient information. What was the total sales tax paid? What was the total tax paid? Let's see what they tell us. The first statement tells us that the most expensive item was most expensive items was $100. Okay, now listen carefully. Okay, again, we don't have to do anything, we just have to think logically. The most expensive item is $100. Since we are told that the average is 3, which means the total amount of the 3 items, because of the fact that the average is 50, total amount has to be 50 times 3, or 150. The most expensive item, first statement tells us, is $100. If the most expensive item is 100, we subtract the most expensive, we are left with $50 for the other 2 items together. The other 2 items together must have cost $50, and because their total cost is only $50, neither of those 2 items could have gone above $80. Neither of those 2 items could have gone above $80, which means the total sales tax that we're going to pay in this scenario is the sales tax on this item, the tax that we're going to pay, which was the question, how much is the tax? The answer is 6% of $100. We're going to pay $6 in tax. The first statement by itself is quite sufficient. The first statement by itself is quite sufficient. Let's look at the second statement, shall we? A, D, B, C, E. Because we just found out that the first statement by itself was sufficient, we know answer cannot be A, B, C, or E. It will have to be either A or D. In the second statement, they tell us that the least expensive item, was $10. Well, if the least expensive was $10, that means the cost of the other 2 has to be 140. Cost of the other 2 has to be 140 by the same logic as before, because the 3 items have the average price of 50. If the 3 items have an average price of 50, then 3 items must have cost $150. Least expensive was $10, which means the cost of the other 2 items together, this is the combined item, 140. Now this is tricky, 140, this is not enough information. This is not enough information because, well, here are the 2 scenarios. The total cost of the 2 items is 140. One scenario is that the items were 70 plus 70. And since neither of these 2 items is more than 80, and this item is only $10, in this scenario the tax would be 0. You will pay no tax on any of these 3 items, because one item we are assuming is $70, the other items we are assuming is $70, for a total of 140, and the least expensive was $10. So that's one possibility. We have no way of knowing what we're dealing with here. Another possibility is that the total cost is 140 of the other 2 items. Maybe one item was just a penny, and the other item was $139.99. In which case we will pay sales tax 6% of this amount. 6% of almost 140. So these are the 2 extremes, but the second statement does not give us enough information to figure out for sure what the sales tax is going to be. Second statement is not enough, the answer is A. The answer is A. The first statement by itself was quite sufficient. That was number 37. Let's move on to 38. Let's move on to 38. In number 38, which is the last problem in the first column, they tell us that they recorded the number of eggs. They recorded the number of eggs in each of the 10 birds' nests. The question is, what is the standard deviation? So there is this researcher who is going around recording the number of eggs he or she sees in the bird's nest, and she makes a record of it, and she looks at 10 nests. The question simply is, what was the standard deviation of her observations? There were 10 observations. Let's see what they tell us. In the first statement they tell us that the average of the 10 nests was 4. But do you think knowing the average is enough for us to come to a conclusion as to what exactly was the standard deviation? Of course not. That's not enough. That's not enough at all. A, D, B, C, E. Because the first statement is by itself is not enough, the answer cannot be A or D. Answer would have to be either B, C, or E. Simply knowing what the average is, this does not tell us anything at all about what the standard deviation might be. Let's look at second statement. The second statement tells us that each of the nests had same number of eggs. Well, if each of those 10 nests had exactly the same number of eggs, then there was no deviation. It's the average amount what you see in every one of them. Whatever number of eggs that you see in one nest is the same number of eggs in all the others, and that's your average. There is no deviation from the average. So standard deviation, if they're all the same, the standard deviation is going to be a big fat 0. There is no deviation from the norm. There is no deviation from the average. The observations are all the same. You understand? The answer is B. The second statement by itself is enough. The first statement was not. The answer is B. I'll see you tomorrow where we'll begin the second column. Okay? Bye now.